What's up, everyone? My name is Chris Fonte, CTO of Customer XR, and you're tuning in to another episode of the Working Immersive Podcast. Today, we have the Unreal Engine wizard, Brian Colon, who is here with us. Welcome. I'm glad you could poof in like that.
Thank you.
That was very impressive.
Thanks for having me, bro.
So, as I said, he is the Unreal Engine wizard. He's very proficient in using Unreal Engine as well as Blender, and he has quite a cool history of how he got started with game development. He is now the project lead at Customer XR, so a lot of the apps that we're developing, he's the one that's spearheading the development of them. He's very skilled in what he does, so I wanted to give you the floor, maybe talk a bit about your history and what you do.
All right. Well, it all began when I was a wee lad. You know, growing up, playing video games. It goes real deep. You know, you're a kid, you have an imagination, and when you're in these worlds, it doesn't get any more imaginative than that. So I decided, hey, you know, when I grow up, I want to learn how to do that. I want to make my own worlds, bring places to life, you know. Fast forward, I was 12. I had opened up Blender for the first time, and it had a very, very, very crude game engine built into it using logic nodes, which eventually evolved into what we know as blueprints today. I'm not sure there was a connection. Maybe Unreal was watching Blender say, hey, how can we create a visual coding system like that? And they did. But yeah, so nothing came. I was just messing around from about 12 to 19 years old. When 19 years old, when I decided to take it seriously. I was like, man, I want to make a game now. Give it a shot. And the first attempts were rough. Definitely got some nice. It was horror themed, so I was leaning into that very heavily. Graphics was probably the thing I was really fascinated about, and Blender was real time. What you see, what you get. You can literally edit your model while playing, like at the same time. It was crazy. What we do in Unreal now, but back then that was not normal at all. So I made a couple tech demos in that engine. It really couldn't push a lot. It would get bottlenecked in either performance for the code or graphics. So you couldn't really do all the cool stuff that I wanted to do. So eventually, fast forward a few more years, I was 23. I was like, okay, I was working at VR World, and it was the VR arcade that is no longer alive in New York City. And it was a Halloween of 2021, I believe. I was like, hey, you know, why not make a VR game for the first time? I was always making 2D flat screen games. There was going to be a Halloween party at the job. I was like, oh man, you know, let me make a demo and show it off, see what happens. And fast forward, everyone loved it. It was a game called The End. It was an exclusive to VR World. It ended up being one of the most popular games in there. And then unfortunately, of course, they closed. And then fast forward, now we're Customer XR.
Nice. Yeah, The End was super fun. That was a really fun game to put people in and out of because you designed it in a way that you didn't have to really do that much onboarding. You just kind of give them the controllers. You say, these are your guns. You don't have to move anywhere. You just defend your position. And it worked really well. People loved it, like you said. But yeah, going back to Blender, I mean, I feel like I've been using that a lot lately. I feel like it pairs with like pretty much any other game engine software that's out there. It's like part of the pipeline. Do you use it often to this day?
Almost everything to this day. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's probably almost going to run through, objects are almost always going to run through Blender, especially if they're not from scratch. Well, actually, no, the other way around. If they're from scratch, they're getting built in Blender. But either way, if I have to buy an asset, and let's say it wasn't made for real time. So yeah, we're going to sit in there. And, you know, I have, what do you call it? I wear a lot of hats, as you'd say. So, you know, I can't design a 3D car that looks real from scratch myself, but you give me one, I can turn it into a real-time functional, you know, model that doesn't chug the game. It goes from 2 million vertices, I could bring it down to about 4,000. So stuff like that. I'm very good at editing models, texturing, you know, stuff like that. But Blender is absolutely a solid part of the pipeline that I don't think would ever change.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned like using a car and basically taking the super detailed model off of something like CG Trader, and then you kind of optimize it and actually make it functional for a VR game. Do you have any examples of recent things that you've worked on like that car? Like what was that for?
So we're in the middle of a little secret project. I'm not gonna name names yet, but it is vehicle based. But enterprise stuff. I had to take a very high poly car, cut it into pieces, meaning the door, the hood, take internal parts from other 3D models, because the quality differences are, these are, at the end of the day, these models you're buying, they're made by regular people like us who are, hey, I'm gonna make a model and I'm gonna sell it. So sometimes they don't have the details you need, so you have to pull from maybe the same name of the car. It's the same model, but it's a different person who uploaded it. Each one has a different piece. So yeah, I would have to, it's like doing surgery on a 3D model. That's what I do. So.
Yeah, and you've done not just cars too. I know for some of the quick service restaurant stuff we've done, even just these companies and these quick service restaurants, they'll have very specific little tools that they use that are not really available on like CG Trader. And those little tools, I think you have to make from scratch a lot of the times, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Sometimes, and that all came from like the idea of like, let me not find an excuse why we can't do something. Oh, but back then I also didn't have money like that, so I had to really, guess I'm doing it myself. And so I could create basic objects that look decent enough from scratch. It's reference material. As long as I have the reference material, yeah, I can mimic.
Yeah, so you just need the picture basically. So from what I recall, when we were doing the quick service restaurant training, we actually flew out to this restaurant, took pictures of the tools that they wanted us to recreate, and then we handed them off to Brian, and he was able to just manipulate them based off of a picture, and now you're able to grab them in VR, look at them, and actually use them. So it adds to the realism a lot. And a lot of these companies where they want to standardize everything, they want to have those same tools like visualized in the app. So it does come in handy when you're making these training applications to be able to just build something from straight off of a picture. Is there any kind of things that you like about Unreal Engine that you don't find in something like Unity, for example?
Definitely when first deciding what engine I was going to move to from Blender, I was trying to find something that still had the familiar, workflow, and that was Blueprints. At the time, I think Unity had Playmaker, but it was third party. They didn't have a lot of documentation at the time I originally started, which was actually before I made the official move to Unreal, because I was looking for a while before ever actually changing. And Blueprints was the logic nodes from Blender, but way better, way more free, allowed me to do way more. People would say, coding was even more free than that. And it's like, well, I haven't reached a brick wall yet on, what Blueprints can do. So I'm fully satisfied with that.
Yeah, I think Blueprints are a lot easier to learn with. Somebody that's just getting into game development, you could just say like, you could give a picture of the node graph and they could just kind of easily understand it. Like, okay, this square does this node is connecting here. Okay, that makes sense. Well, with code, you kind of have to understand like where things are going, how things are laid out in order to understand anything about it, because it just looks like a bunch of text. And a lot of people, they say they like Unity because they think it's easier when you're coming from that coding background rather than, for someone like you came from the Blueprint background. I think both have great use cases and they both excel in different ways. I think Unity has had some capabilities that Unreal Engine wasn't able to have with some of the apps in the past, especially with 360 video. We went through a lot of rigorous testing in order to finally get 360 videos to finally like reliably play in our apps in Unreal. But in Unity, they just kind of like work right off the bat. So, there's kind of some hoops you got to jump through sometimes with Unreal. I'm sure in Unity, there's some hoops you got to jump through to achieve something that Unreal can do easily. Yeah. So for us, we just use a combination, whatever we need to use to reach that goal, we'll use it. And that includes also Xcode to make the Apple Vision Pro experiences. We're trying to be headset agnostic. And one thing we're actually trying to do right now in the office is develop for the Galaxy headset. Have you tried it?
I think I put it on one time and messed with the menu. It reminds me a lot of the EVP, but don't have extensive experience with it yet.
To me, the Galaxy XR was kind of like a response to the current state of XR. So there's, on one hand, you have the Meta Quest. You can get them for as low as $300, pretty accessible, but maybe not that capable. Then you have the Apple Vision Pro on the complete opposite end of the pricing spectrum, for $4,000, but it could do some great things. It's more of a mature headset, less about games, more about viewing media and stuff, I would say. So Samsung came and said, we're going to try to make something for the middle. So their headset is very similar to the Apple Vision Pro, feels very similar, has the hand tracking, has the eye tracking, and it costs around $1,000. So, there's all these like gaps now that are being filled by different solutions and different providers, which I think is great for the industry. Recently there was a big shift in the industry from the Meta layoffs. I know we've talked a lot about that and how it's actually might be good in the long run, but I know a lot of people are hurting right now. So do you have any thoughts on the recent layoffs?
Yeah, I don't think there's any other way to look at it as unfortunate for those people, but I understand from, corporate enterprise perspective, they were definitely they were trying to push their vision of what it was all gonna be, and people weren't like, no, that's not what we want out of it. We don't want Facebook on our face, to be honest. Like, we don't want to feel like it's a forced social interaction either. And so what I'm seeing, how I look at it is, Meta's backing away and gonna let the market do its thing. Unfortunately they have to let people go for that because now they don't need those roles. They were trying to be the platform and the developer at the same time, and spearheading and every other part. It was too much. I understand. It sucks, and I hope this allows it's like when the market's correct. Like it crashes, but then it goes back to where it should be. I feel like that's what's happening now in the industry. I feel like it'll level out. In time. Once we figure out, okay, now that Meta's no longer trying to be the front man of it all, who's going to be the front man? Or are we all going to do it together,
Well, another headset manufacturer that's coming into the market soon is Valve with their Steam frame, right? So that headset is very much a gaming-focused headset. The pass-through, in fact, is actually black and white, which is kind of weird. Most of the headsets nowadays are trying to strive for the most realistic pass-through, so you could use augmented reality. And they chose to focus more on the VR gaming aspect. Now, Valve has always historically they've only really developed a couple games like Half-Life, Counter-Strike, those types of games. But for the most part, they let Steam, their online marketplace for games, it's kind of like a Wild West. Like, all the developers can do whatever they want. They're not really like wall gardened into any specific thing. And that has worked pretty well for them. So that gives me hopes for the VR gaming industry. If this Steam frame really does take off, I think a lot of these VR developers that maybe lost their studios will be able to come back in a major way on the Steam. Then on the other side of that, it kind of gives these headsets, kind of, at least for Meta, they're able to maybe focus a little bit more on making the tools themselves more consumer focused, more like for people that are not gamers, which I think is important. I think that's one of the main reasons why all these studios close. They're taking a shift away from games and more into usability and utility apps. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but at a first glance, obviously people are like, oh, Metaverse failed, Mark Zuckerberg didn't do, like, it's like, for people like us though, we know like what's actually going on. And in fact, it might be good for the industry what happened. Not good for the developers, obviously. I feel for them, but like I said, I hope they could bounce back in a major way. Are there any like utility apps that you've tried on the Quest? I know it's like very gaming focused, but anything that you've tried recently that was maybe less gaming focused you liked?
Most recently, I tried something called Simtrix, which is a medical training system. It's probably the only training system I've tried that's on the market publicly that isn't ours. So that was very interesting. It's very nice seeing stuff like that going on because 90%, 99% of the content I've ever seen or used myself on Quest was a game. It was a game. Utility. I almost found it like, how can I make this use? How can this be utility right now? Like for me at home, nothing really.
Yeah, and Simtrix is a really cool platform. At first, maybe it feels like a game, but really it's a training tool, like the stuff that we develop. and it's meant for nursing training. So it's used a lot at schools, basically to train up these nurses, get them, instead of using like a dummy on a bench or something, like they actually have a real person in augmented reality, and you could actually talk to the person. They're like a AI agent basically, so you could talk back and forth with them. I think that believability, making the human feel real, makes the training feel real. That's actually something we're also trying to incorporate in some of our apps, right? Like adding some AI NPCs.
Yeah, one of my most recent ones, our second QSR, we put AI customer in there. You could follow the directions. It tells you to ask what question to ask them, but you could totally just have an open conversation. And I love how the AI has a full context of not only the room they're in, but the world they're in. Like that app specifically took place in Australia, and I was having a conversation about the beaches in Australia with the person and the weather of the city downtown. But they were I don't live in Australia, but they were naming real places and all that, and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. This is very grounded. This is what we need,
Yeah, and we achieved that using with Convi, which is a really powerful platform for adding AI NPCs into games and usability and training tools. And I actually used it when I was at the MIT Reality Hack last week or 2 weeks ago now. We had an app that was basically exploring dreams. It starts you off where you first hear a monologue about dreams. It's filmed with a stereoscopic Canon R6 lens, which is pretty cool. Then you go into a dark room where a sleep paralysis demon approaches you. You tried it yesterday, right? It was pretty spooky.
Yeah.
And then after that, that same sleep paralysis demon is in front of you again, but now they're like good. Everything's bright. You're no longer in the dark room. And she starts talking to you about dreams. And at first I see people, they'll just be like, am I supposed to talk? It's like, yeah, you could talk to that ghost. And then it makes it into like a open-ended conversation where you could just keep talking and talk as much as you want. So, there's that little intro area, but then, thanks to Convi, the app then becomes like almost like a therapy. You talk about your dreams, and we ended up winning our track with that app. So pretty proud of it. I don't know where we'll take it next. Obviously, we're going to continue adding some AI NPCs to the things we do because they're super powerful. But yeah. Another thing we usually do on this podcast is we ask AI for a random business type, and then we try to think of ways that business could use XR.
Okay.
So let's try it. Can you please give me a random business type?
How about a cozy family-owned plant nursery? Picture shelves full of vibrant greenery, gardening tools, and friendly staff helping you pick the perfect plant for your space.
We actually did this on another episode. They gave us the same like plant nursery thing, so we'll try again. Can you give us another one?
Got it. Let's shake things up. How about a mobile coffee truck specializing in artisan lattes and pastries, popping up at events or business districts? Think charming, caffeinated, and always on the move.
Okay, so like a mobile kind of like food truck, but they serve like pastries and coffee and stuff. Food, obviously, you would think like, oh, what could you use XR and food? Like, how do those combine? But QSR training is like all we've been doing. Something like that could definitely use VR to kind of train up the baristas and stuff and basically recreate that food truck in an immersive XR environment so that these employees are ready and trained up before they even get on the truck.
Yeah, for a business that specific too, it's actually even more useful than to a major restaurant, because in a small space like that, things are very standardized. At least they should be. The training they already have for like, listen, you're driving this truck, you don't really got to cook too much, but you got to know where everything is, temps, all that, the standard food safety stuff. But it'd be much like, listen, this headset will teach you how to use this truck and everything in it. So here you go.
Yeah, and then before they even get in the truck, even if they're maybe like not near, maybe they're like traveling and they're going to be your employee like a month from now, if you're able to send them a headset, by the time they get to you, they'll already be familiarized with the truck, familiarized with the tools, and it just makes it that much quicker and easier to onboard them. Another thing maybe that they could, like as a marketing tool, these kind of like this coffee barista food truck could maybe use the metaverse. You know, there's like a platform called RP1 where you're able to, it's pretty new platform, but you're able to place things on a geographic 1-to-1 scale of the real Earth. Now, since they're a moving mobile food truck, it might be different because you can't really put like a moving thing on there. Mm-hmm. But if it wasn't if it was like a regular, you know, cafe that had a location, they could actually put in that location, the coordinates, take over that space on the spatial fabric of the map in RP1, and then build something like that people could visit. You know, maybe just they could see some what the place looks like, maybe some specials. You know, put some textures in there that just show the menu. Yeah. You know, things like that. I think that would separate them from pretty much every other cafe, because none of them are doing something like that for sure. But they will probably start doing stuff like that, you know, in the future. I think a lot of these companies are going to start leveraging XR. That's what Customer XR is trying to do in the first place. So,
absolutely.
So yeah, those are two ways that a cafe barista place can use XR.
You hear that, Starbucks?
Yeah, Starbucks, hit us up. You know, working with a lot of QSRs, but I mean, would Starbucks be considered a QSR?
Yeah, but they only serve coffee.
No, they got some food.
Oh, they do?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I haven't been there in like 10 years.
No, Starbucks definitely could be a client of ours, I think, you know, to teach the employees how to like put the things in the oven. It's like Dunkin' Donuts, you know, you got to like put the stuff in the oven to heat it up, little pastries and stuff like that, and sandwiches. That's the type of things we build.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Do you have anything else, Wizard, that you would like to bestow upon the audience?
Stop finding excuses for why you can't do something and look for how and why you can. That's how I got to where I am today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. We hit some roadblocks in the past. Like as Brian said, we used to work at VR World, and we were pretty passionate about that place, and we were trying to build a lot for it. That's actually how I got started with Unreal, because you had the end, and then I was talking about some ideas I had for a game, and you were like, bro, download Unreal. So
get started.
That's how it all started, you know. And even though they closed, we didn't stop. Kept building with Unreal Engine. We were able to launch Customer XR and continue leveraging those Unreal Engine skills. And now we're learning Unity and Xcode and everything. So yeah, just don't give up. You know, life's gonna throw hurdles at you. You just got to jump over them.
Yep, 100%, bro.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that's all the time we got today. So thank you, Brian, the Wizard, for being here.
Well, thank you, man.
I'm glad you could poof in and join us. And yeah, just keep a lookout for the next episode of the Working Immersive Podcast. We've been doing these like once every 1 or 2 months, bringing on various guests, and it's been pretty good, getting some good insights on the XR community and the industry. So stay tuned for the next episode, and thank you for watching.